Welcome to 0 to 60 on the Believe Network. I am your host, Matt McChesney. Happy Monday to everybody out there. Football season is over. That's depressing, but one hell of a Super Bowl yesterday, Super Bowl 58, with the Chiefs coming out on top in overtime over the San Francisco 49ers. Three-time Super Bowl champion Mark Schlereth is going to be joining us on today's show to talk about the season, the Chiefs dynasty, and so much more, including just how hard it is to go back-to-back, as he was a member of one of the last two teams to do it. First time in 19 years that a squad has gone back-to-back. But as always, the show is brought to you by our great friends at BetOnline. And with football over, BetOnline still continues to be your number one source for all of your basketball wagering needs. And with the tournament coming up in March and Pro Bowl in full swing, they are the place to go to get all of your wagering news, notes. I get my weather from that site, so really great site. They do a great job with their up-to-the-minute odds. They're always refreshing the wagering numbers on their site, and they do a really good job of making sure that the bettor has every opportunity to make some money. Make sure you go and head to BetOnline today and become a part of the team. And remember to use the promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BetOnline. The game starts here, and we roll on 0 to 60. The great Mark Schlereth joins us here on the Believe Network. And I think that there he is. How are you, Stink? Good to see you, brother. Welcome to the show. I know you had a busy-ass morning. You've been playing ball since 6 a.m.
Yeah. No, it's been good. It is, for me, it's depressing because I have such a connection to Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, the McCaffreys. I've known Kyle since he was 12, probably, Christian since he's probably 2. I've been around the McCaffreys and the Shanahans forever. And I was a real 49er fan yesterday. I mean, I was really cheering on the 49ers because of those connections. Anthony Lynn is their offense coordinator. He was a teammate of mine for the Broncos. Bobby Turner was our running back coach. There are so many connections there for the 49ers, known John Lynch forever. So I was pulling hard for the Niners. So as soon as they ended up losing that damn thing, I flipped off the TV and went to bed all upset. But anyhow, I'm okay. I'll make it.
Like I said, the three-time Super Bowl champion Mark Schlereth joins us here on 0 to 60. And I think everybody in Denver yesterday was pulling for the Niners, just the connection and, Christian and Ed and, Bobby Turner, like you said, and Greasy and Shanahan. And I mean, just seeing Mike up in the box and you can see the tension on his face.
Mm-hmm.
Look, everybody knows the outcome, 25-22 overtime. What a football game. If you're the Niners, though, let's go with them first. How do they – I mean, I hate to say this, but how do you build off of this heartbreak? I mean, this is just ripping your guts out and just showing them to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've heard a lot of the narrative about Kyle Shanahan can't win the big one, can only get you there, this, that, and the other, which is, a bunch of garbage. But there were some questionable decisions. I think hindsight always – lends you to kind of question or second guess what went down. We can talk a lot about that, but let's face it, Kyle Shanahan has lost 3 Super Bowls, 1 as an offense coordinator, 2 as a head coach, to the 2 best quarterbacks that have ever been on the face of the planet. I mean, the Super Bowl against the Atlanta Falcons, he lost that to Tom Brady. And obviously the last 2 that he's been a part of, he's lost to Patrick Mahomes, and he's had 2 different quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy versus Mahomes. So, there are a lot of things that go into this, and the bottom line is, you've been beat by the 2 greatest ever to do it, and there's no shame in that. But I understand the narrative too. I understand people are going to question you. I understand all those things that kind of come with losing. But to get back to your question, how do you build on it? Well, you look 1 more year of experience for a quarterback. We're still loaded as a football team. We're damn good, and we know we're really good. And so, eventually that team kind of decays and dissipates and ages out, and that window starts to close. So you got to do something sooner than later, but they're still in good shape.
Now that 91 Redskins team that you played on, the Hogs, in pretty much every publication that I can find, everything online, it is the number one Super Bowl team ever. I mean, just load the bear, right? And I bring it up not just for the greatness of the team, but people forget that stretch of Redskins teams won with 3 different quarterbacks under Joe.
Right.
And Mark Rippon, in 91, and Doug Williams and Theismann, and they were all. It seemed like Coach Gibbs had the ability to put a guy back there that would run his system and manage things correctly, get the ball to his playmakers, and rely on an unbelievable offensive line that you were a part of. Do you find some similarities here between San Francisco and what they're doing? You think that Purdy can be kind of a solid force moving forward, or do they need to reshuffle the deck again and go find another guy?
No, I think Purdy is that guy. I mean, I think Purdy is a really exceptional young quarterback. You got to give credit to the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've relied on their defense all season long, and their defense has been outstanding. And then Steve Spagnuolo. Spags dialed up a couple of blitzes when they had to have them, and he got free runners, man. And some of those were protection breakdowns. I'm not sure what happened on the last 3rd down and 4, what the call was, but they definitely screwed that damn thing up. Both guards pinched down on the nose. So, what are you doing? I don't know. But obviously you screwed that thing up. And, that's the difference between having a team that, that has that belief, that's been there, that's done that before, the attention to detail, how quickly that turns, because that receiver won on his little whip route on the outside. That was Jennings. He won the route. That was a touchdown had you blocked it correctly. And that's the difference in this league between winning and losing. And that's what the Chiefs seem to be able to do in crunch time moments, where other teams seem to fold in those crunch time moments. Is that a believability in your quarterback? Is that, if you're on defense, you believe that if we just give this guy an opportunity, if we just shut him and hold him to a field goal, we're going to win this thing, we're going to walk off? Is that your offense understanding, hey, man, if we just buy Mahomes a little bit of time, Mahomes is going to make something happen? I believe all those things are true when you have a guy, and I played with a guy in John Elway, that you always just figure it out. No matter what has happened, no matter how far down we get, he's got the ability to make a couple of plays and put us right back in this thing.
And so you brought up John, and he was, the quarterback on a team that went back to back. Brady's Patriots went back to back in 04-05. Kansas City goes back to back now, first time in 19 years. Explain to everybody, because it's in the basketball world, there's 3-peats. There's never been a 3-peat in pro football. Just explain to everybody how damn hard it is to go back to back.
Yeah, I mean, just from an injury standpoint, from an attrition standpoint, your roster turns over probably 30% every year. And you think about that, back in the early to mid 90s, it didn't happen as often because, free agency probably didn't happen until full free agency until 95 or so. And so, but it does, it turns over about 30% a year. You lose very prominent players. I think the thing that people really don't understand is you lose prominent guys who are glue guys within your locker room. Guys that are great special team mavens that all of a sudden get a chance to go somewhere else and start. Maybe it's a DB, maybe it's a linebacker, but you better have your finger on the pulse of the guys that provide levity, that provide a look in practice, the guys that are professionals, that maybe aren't starters, but are vital to the kind of lifeblood that courses through the veins of your organization. And those are the guys that I think tend to get overlooked, and you lose a few of those guys, and man, your team can totally take a different personality on. And so the Chiefs obviously have had a really good understanding of who their guys are and who their guys aren't, guys that they can let leave. And, it's going to hurt a little bit from a talent standpoint, but it doesn't crush our spirit. And I think that's the big thing. And then ultimately, I was talking to my radio show today. Now it comes down to the rest of the AFC. It comes down to the Bills. It comes down to Josh Allen and Burrow and Herbert and Lamar and all the other good quarterbacks, man. you got to band together, all the good teams, you got to band together and make sure the Chiefs don't do this again. And like that to me, this is a whole AFC thing, guys. You cannot let this team, and that's what you face every week. You face that kind of, even the bad teams, you face that kind of battle where you are a target and teams are going to try to come after you.
So, look, they've been kind of sellers in Kansas City in the free agency, and they let Tyreek Hill go and they trade him, and they do a good job in the draft. They haven't really been, going out there and signing a bunch of big name guys. They just ride with Kelsey and Mahomes. They build around them. They do a good job of shuffling in offensive linemen, although the two tackles are definitely something they need to look at in the offseason. Do you think Kansas City is going to be more of a buyer moving forward, like a destination? Kind of what happened with the Patriots right afterwards. They go on a dynasty and then they get Welker and Moss and they just start bringing in Odelius Thomas and they got all these dudes coming in. They didn't really win with all those guys, but at the same time, you think Kansas City is going to be more of a buyer now than letting guys leave and go down that road?
I don't think so. I think they've done it the right way because normally in free agency, like you're getting good players at premium prices. That's how free agency works. So I think the second tier free agents where there's actually real value guys who are ascending that are second tier, where you have a chance to actually sign them and have them hit them on their way up. The most of the really high value guys are either flatlining or ascending a little bit. And
Right.
so I think they've done it the right way with going after guys that are ascending players that aren't going to cost you an arm and a leg. And then it really becomes about the draft and the develop aspect. I think that's what we tend to forget when it comes to drafting guys. It's really not only the draft, but how do you develop a player? How do you get a player like a Chris Jones to be a dominant player over the course of a couple of years? And they've done that with Jones and Karloftis and some of their DBs. Even last year, at one point they were starting 7 rookies on their defensive side of the ball. And they were all their drafts and their picks, and you see now all of a sudden that defense really became the strength of this football team over the course of last year. And their second half, the way they shut teams down in the second half has been incredible. So, I think that's kind of how you do it. And I think what's the guy's name over there? This GM, Brett Veach, has
Yep.
done a phenomenal job of putting that stuff together and understanding what we are and how we go about it. And I think that's one of the big things when you're lockstep with your coach and you're lockstep the organization. You guys understand what the coach is looking for and how we're going to put this together, and you're all on the same page. I think that's pretty incredible.
Now, look, this is a copycat league, brother. You know that more than anybody. Um, I don't know if this is a question that can be answered, but with the draft coming up, what can the Broncos and that front office and Sean Payton learn from their division rival that's won the division 8 years in a row and looks like they're going to go 9? What can we learn from Kansas City moving forward that we seem to have forgot since 2015?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I think you're not going to out Mahomes. That's just not going to happen.
Not happening.
So, right. So now, I look at what lesson can you learn from them winning a Super Bowl? And to me, the lesson is you've got to have a better roster. You've got to create a better roster where you can win in a myriad of ways. And then ultimately, you have to play keep away. I mean, there's not one person on the planet that when San Francisco had to settle for a field goal in overtime, they didn't go, well, that's over.
Yep.
Like Mahomes is going to drive them right down and they're going to find a way to score a touchdown. And I mean, it was a foregone conclusion. You just kind of had to wait and watch. And that was kind of my takeaway is, I go back to that third quarter and I heard Kyle Shanahan make this explanation. It was like, hey, they asked him about establishing the run. And he said, well, it's really hard to establish the run when you go 3 and out twice. And I thought to myself, that's true. You know what else is hard to establish the run is when you don't run it. And you went 6 straight plays where you threw the football and went 2, 3 and outs in a row. And that's egregious. And it's not only egregious because it didn't work, and I get it if you complete one and you get a first down, then you hand the ball off and it gets you into a rhythm and all those things. I understand all that stuff. but I'm talking about eating up clock and keeping Mahomes off the football field as often as you can. That to me is the recipe. It doesn't like you still are going to lose probably more than you're going to win, but if you don't do that, you're going to lose every one of them. So that's kind of how I approach that stuff. I always hear that stuff. Well, 3 and outs and 3 and outs, and we really didn't get to run the ball. Well, you really chose not to run the ball in some of those situations. I don't know about you, but in that overtime period when they got first and goal from the 9 or from the 15-yard line, I was like, run it 4 straight times. Just run it, run it. And, they get 6 yards in the first carry. And I'm like, all right, here we go. And then they got stuffed for 0. And I think I got to spread them and run it right back down their throat. Got a favorable box matchup, made them defend the pass and give it to Chris McCaffrey one more time and see if you can get yourself into a 4th down and 1. I don't know. A couple of different mistakes made from a management standpoint. Like, hindsight being 2020, as I thought back to it and I was watching the game, first I thought, well, why did you not defer and get the ball second so you know exactly what you have to do? Right. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe it's because your defense just defended the field and you gave up a game-tying field goal. Maybe you thought your guys were tired. Then I thought about that further, and it was 11 plays, but it was all dump-offs underneath because you were giving that to them. That's not exactly exhausting style of football. And then 2, they score, you go to a TV timeout. You kick off, you go to a TV timeout. You go 3 kneel downs. You go to a TV timeout. You go to the coin toss. You go to a TV timeout. I go, that'd be 8 minutes of real time, right? That pass. Like, you're not exhausted.
Yeah.
And then when I was watching Kansas City, I thought, what an advantage you have at having the ball second, because every fourth, you got 5 downs because 4th down is no longer relevant. That's a go for it down, even if you're on your own 10, because if you punt, you lose. Right. And so then I was like, wow, they know exactly what they have. And I don't know if you saw this, but out there, a couple of Kansas City players said, well, we really didn't discuss overtime. The new rules, didn't really know them. And not that makes that big a difference, but Kansas City said, we knew the rules. We were going to defer if we got Chris Jones said we were going to defer if we won the coin toss, we would have deferred. And then if they scored 7, we were going to go down, tie it up 7, or going to go down and score, and then we're going for 2 to win it.
And that makes sense.
Right. And so I was like, as I was watching, I'm like, 3rd down and 6. Well, normally that would be a stress down for any offense, right? Because we got to convert. So we got to throw it above we got to throw it beyond the chains. And they're like, no. We can check 1 down, get 3, and have a 4th and 3 or a 4th and 2. Where now you have to defend everything. And we got Patrick Mahomes, and we got these quarterback runs in too. So, yeah, I just thought the tactical error by Kyle, and again, hindsight's always, you always have clarity when it comes to hindsight. But as I thought back on it, I was like, wow, that was a colossal mismanagement of the game.
And I'll tell you, picking against Patrick Mahomes in any facet these days it's Russian roulette. You're going to lose eventually. So,
right.
All right, look, I like the greatest of all time talk, but at the same time, there's so many great players that have played the position. I'm not going to sit here and be like this. He's the GOAT. He's in the conversation
Sure.
of best of all time. I got to believe that. At his age, with the way that roster's constructed, and Andy Reid looks a spry 65 to me. I mean, what would be the determining factor in not being as good or better next year? Like, Kansas City's not just going to fall off of a cliff.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm 100% with you. I thought Andy Reid really leaned into the run game this year, mostly because he had to, but I think he learned a valuable lesson. Even in that game late, Isaiah Pacheco's only averaging 3.5 yards a carry, but you know what they kept doing? Giving it to Isaiah Pacheco.
Kept running.
They didn't stop. And, and Mahomes, you mentioned, he's 28 years old, man. He's just going to start entering the prime of his quarterbacking career. And, Kelsey is getting older. He's 34 years old. This is his 12th year. But I talked to Matt Nagy just before this season started, and he's like, one thing about Travis, he doesn't miss practice. He practices his ass off. He takes care of his body. He's like, the guy is an unbelievable route runner, and whatever he loses from a physical standpoint, he far makes up with it mentally. And then you saw the way Andy Reid used him, even after the dust up on the sideline where he's pissed off. In the touchdown to MVS, like they used him as a decoy. They ran a little switch route, and two guys go with Kelsey, and MVS is standing in the end zone catching an easy touchdown. Man, that was big time. And so, I just like they are that good. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, who's going to check? You got the standard. The one thing about the AFC, you got a bunch of good quarterbacks.
Oh yeah,
and a bunch of really good teams. But still, I'm with you. I mean, if you're telling me it's between Mahomes and Lamar, or Mahomes and Josh Allen, or Mahomes and Burrow, or Mahomes and Herbert, or Mahomes and fill in the blank, I'll take Mahomes and take my chances.
The great Mark Schlereth joins us here on 0 to 60. You can hear him every morning on The Fan on 104.3 out here in Denver. And also his podcast, the Stinking Good podcast, right?
Stinking Truth, yeah.
Stinking Truth podcast. And look, I was listening this morning in between, getting back from the facility with the grind. And I was listening to Evans and Merrillat talk about Travis Kelce rushed Andy Reid. And I mean, I was listening to your response and you're like, guys, are you kidding me? How soft are you?
Right.
I saw a really passionate dude that wants the ball, and Andy Reid wasn't paying attention, and he bumped him a little bit, and they were like, oh, hey, Travis, how are you? And
right.
Then I think that's fire and passion. It's not Odell Beckham beating up the kicker net. I don't think that Kelsey's looking for eyeballs when he reacts like that. He's a leader that wants the football. Where do you fall on that, man? Because it's definitely not him going after his unbelievably good coach.
Yeah. First off, to call that a shove is an insult to shoves. Like you've never scuffled if you think that's a shove. That was straight up an accidental titty bump. And like you said, Reed was, Andy was not, he just wasn't ready for it. And Travis even tried to grab his arm, like, oh shoot, I just bumped into my coach.
Oh no.
There was a sudden panic on Travis's standpoint. But listen, man, like anybody who's ever spent any amount of time on an NFL sideline as a player or coach, or player, you have had a few of those dust ups. Every one of us has. And like, if you don't understand that, then you just you've never been around it. You've never played. You've just never seen it. But yeah, that was completely accidental physical contact. And yeah, I've had people on social media like, well, okay, it's okay to shove your coach and get in your, like, Are you serious? Yes, it is. It's okay.
Yeah.
I've shoved a few coaches like, get out of my face. So yeah, there's been a few of those instances where it takes a bit, but yeah, I was like, whatever. It didn't even when I saw it, I had no bearing to me on the game. I was like, good for Travis. He's pissed. He wants the ball. He's pissed that they just turned it over. I'm with him.
So I thought the last night's Super Bowl was incredible. It was entertaining. I was obviously pulling for San Francisco. I know you turned it off at the end.
Yeah.
I know you saw this. Okay. Now, I personally don't know how to react to this, bro.
Right.
This is the Duke walking out the trophy to the Chiefs in the Raiders Stadium, and then he's on the podium with him. Like, Larry Zonka was involved in this too. They couldn't switch, and he couldn't do the other job, and Zonka couldn't do this. Like,
yeah,
I don't think this is on John. He was just told where to go, probably honoring a Super Bowl team. But damn, this is a bad look. What do you think?
Well, it didn't. Like, I know how those things happen. So when my son was pitching the big leagues, he had the season finale, the 3-game finale was at the Cubbies. So it was in Chicago. And it was on my it was on my bucket list. I promised my son when he was 12, there were 3 stadiums I'd never step in unless he was pitching them. And that was, Wrigley, that was Fenway, and that was Yankee Stadium. And I got to see my son pitch in all 3 of those stadiums. And so the Cubs called me up, and and knew that Daniel at the time was a rookie who's pitching for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So they called me up and said, "Hey, man, we know you're going to be here. We'd like you to throw out the first pitch and then sing the 7th inning stretch."
Hey.
And I instantly said, "Absolutely, I'm in." Right? I was so excited. Then I hung up, and then I started thinking about it. And I realized, man, I'm there to support my son. I could just see my son warming up at the bullpen and me up there looking like an idiot going, "Take me out to the ball game," right? And so then I called the Cubs back and go, "Hey, listen, on second thought,
No.
this is probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
I'm honored, but I'm just not going to do it." And which they were totally cool with. But I'm sure when they asked John, a month ago or whatever, because I think it was to honor the 25th anniversary of our Super Bowl, Super Bowl
Right.
32, John was like, "Sure." And I'm sure there was a minute there when he got the trophy from Zonka, was like, "Oh shoot, I didn't really think this out." But I'm in too deep right now, right? So I've seen it since. It didn't really bother me. I was like, I get how it goes. But there are a lot of people on my radio show, a lot of people on our text line that were none too happy with Elway over the look of celebrating what seemed to be celebrating the Chiefs, and not just. It's kind of like it's almost for me like a presidential thing. Like I may not like the guy in office, but I respect the hell out of the office of the presidency.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to act like a petulant child. I'm going to honor the office of the president. So I guess that's how I take that one.
Well, I'll say this: the last time I saw him hoist a trophy, they were winning one. So hopefully this motivates everybody down there at Dove Valley and UC Health to go get another one. So the great Mark Schlereth joins us. Brother, thank you so much for coming on the show. Enjoy your Monday and the off season. I know you'll be back to work very soon. Remember, every morning on 104.3 The Fan, just does a great job with Mike Evans, and a staple out here in Denver on the morning ride. So, brother, thank you so much. Have a great day, and keep it up, Stink.
You got it, Matt. Take care, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Brother. Peace. What a absolutely great interview with Mark Schlereth, 3-time Super Bowl champion, a member of the Hogs. And if you don't know anything about the Hogs, go look up the 91 Redskins. I mean, they were just unbelievably loaded on both sides of the ball with Hall of Famers and the best offensive line maybe that's ever played, man-to-man, all five, and Mark Rippon and, Gerald Riggs and just dudes, Gerald Green and dudes everywhere. So, won that Super Bowl, and then kind of, he'll even tell you had to leave Washington, and didn't want to, but, the business of football got involved and ended up in Denver. And not only is he one of the toughest guys in NFL history with so many surgeries and so much shit that he overcame, but a staple in the offensive line room for the Broncos for their 2 Super Bowls, started every game, was always there, really helped a young Tom Nalen and a young Brian Habib come to their own, and, playing next to Zimmerman and Tony Jones. And it was just the perfect combination. So Stink does such a great job, and we love having him on the show. Remember that the show is brought to you by our good friends at Bet Online. Make sure you go give them some love. Thank you for all that they do. Tomorrow, we've got a big show. All right. And yesterday, I'm not going to lie, and I'll probably tell them tomorrow on the show, I was pulling for San Francisco. Actually, I may not tell them. I don't know. I was pulling for San Francisco. I wanted to see McCaffrey get a ring, and Mike's already got 2. And now he's got 3. And Big Mike went to Grandview, and I've been working with him for a long time. I posted a cool video on TikTok this morning of him, we call it Bat King, and I'll show it tomorrow when we do the interview. But they run this like quick deuce double team at him in the game, and instead of playing the guard, he goes and shelves Trent Williams, who I believe is the best left tackle I've ever seen play. And he shelves Trent and throws his ass on the ground and just eats Christian McCaffrey in the hole. 6 tackles last night, a forced fumble, a TFL. I mean, he's up for contract. He's won 3 rings with the Chiefs. Hey, Broncos. We need a badass defensive lineman next to Zach Allen. Purcell's probably on his way out. 69 would look real good in orange and blue to come home. Pay this man. He will be our guest tomorrow on the show to talk about the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, everything that goes into being a Kansas City Chief, and a great part of the Dungeon family, and a guy who has been through so many ups and downs in his career and always pushes forward. When you think the chips are stacked against Big Mike, he always comes out on the other side with a big smile on his face. So I'm so excited to have him on the show tomorrow. We're going to try and go every day this week. If we do, we do. If we don't, we don't. We appreciate everybody out there. Make sure you like and subscribe. We got a lot of big news coming up here as we move into 2024 with the gym and the show and the body bags and a bunch of other shit. So really appreciate you all. We'll have this up on Spotify here shortly. Thank you to Mark Schlereth for coming on the show. Thank you to Bree Macis for all she does behind the scenes. And we're out. So yeah, Big Mike tomorrow on the show. Have yourself a great day, folks.